Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love. Action is the ultimate differentiator between the dreamers and achievers. It's really the doers who make it happen, and we want you to be a doer. So in today's episode, we're giving you some quick actionable tips to take more action and get everything you want.
I'm excited about this episode. I feel like this came at a really good time because I'm trying to get back into my get shit done phase. I feel like I go through phases where it's not necessarily that I'm not doing anything, but sometimes not taking action looks like filling your calendar, filling your time with a bunch of busy work and random tasks to avoid doing the thing that you know you need to do or you know you want to do to get the intended result. So I'm trying to get back into actually doing the thing that I know I need to do and taking action toward what I'm trying to accomplish.
I feel like we just talked about this in a podcast episode a few weeks ago, but we kind of talked about how it's easy to get stuck in that place of planning all the time and thinking rather than executing. And it's funny because we were just going over our notes for this episode before we hopped on, and I didn't notice that you wrote this, and I wrote this in my notes down on the outline as well, that action creates clarity more than thinking ever will. And I think you wrote here that it comes from the originals book, maybe, or maybe it's a different quote, but I don't know where it comes from originally, but I love it. And I think it's such a good reminder that the more you execute, you're going to get data on what works and what doesn't, rather than if you're just kind of sitting in that place of planning and thinking, you really have no idea what's going to work until you do it. So yeah, action creates clarity faster than thinking ever will. And that's kind of the whole theme of today's episode.
No, definitely the whole theme of today's episode. I don't know if that quote specifically came from the originals book, but something that did come from that book. I read it last year and it was a super impactful book. I really liked it. But the whole premise of the book was that the most successful people in the world are the ones who failed the most. So kind of back to the idea that everything in life is a numbers game. So when you fail the most, you have a higher quantity of output, and therefore you have a higher chance of putting something out into the world that ends up being a success. I think it's just a good kind of reminder that the more action you take, the further you're going to get, regardless of whether every single action you take ends up panning out, because it's literally not going to. You're going to have a lot of failures, but even those failures are going to provide you a lot of clarity. So those are some of the things we want to talk about in today's episode. We want to get into some of the common action blockers. We have 4 things here that we listed just as different reasons and things why people tend to avoid taking action. And this first one here is action paralysis. Grace, I think you wrote down all of the different things here related to action paralysis. Do you want to?
Yeah. So action paralysis, it's, as y'all know, I am so interested in psychology, and I've been sharing a lot more about psychology and sharing my interest in psychology on the podcast and in my content. So I hope y'all enjoy these little inserts of fun psychology facts. But action paralysis is also called choice paralysis. And it's basically a psychological phenomenon where we become so overwhelmed and unable to take action, even when we have the power or the ability to do so. And I was looking into what the roots are. Like, okay, so if you feel this action paralysis, like, where does this actually come from? And studies show that a lot of this comes from fear. So it can actually be fear of failure, fear of judgment, or even actually fear of success, which is interesting, perfectionism, and overwhelm. It basically, the study I was looking at said that overwhelm comes usually from there being too many steps to execute on something or too many options, which is so interesting. And I think a quick little ad, which we've talked about, I think before when I was moving, give yourself fewer options and try to cut out steps where you can, and you will find it much easier to execute. I feel like our decision fatigue episode, while it's a little bit different, a lot of the principles in that episode could apply here as well. But our brains are also wired to protect us from potential threats. And so they create resistance to change, even when that change would benefit us. And I think that's a good reminder as well. When you're going for a walk, for example, and you go to cross the street and something in your brain says, well, let me look this way one more time. That's your brain protecting you and keeping you safe from something that could potentially be harmful. But when something is new or different or challenging, our brain's job is to keep us feeling as safe as possible. So even when it's not physically harmful, or something that is challenging is not inherently harmful to us, our brain also tries to keep us safe from that and keep us where we are. So I think that causes us to not want to take action or to feel so overwhelmed by the idea of taking action because our brain perceives whatever it is to be a threat. So action paralysis has a lot of different layers to it, but definitely something to think about and something that absolutely prevents you from taking action.
Yeah, and I think that goes into the second action blocker here, which is unclear priorities. And I feel like a lot of times people use confusion as an excuse for not taking action and not executing. So what I mean by that is if you're sitting there saying that you're confused and you don't know what the action is that you need to take, I think you're doing that as a mask to keep yourself safe, keep yourself where you are, and not need to go out and take action. Because if you're sitting there in your brain being like, no, I know exactly what I need to do, then you have no excuse to not be taking the action that you know that you need to take. And I heard, I'm not sure exactly where I heard this, but it was basically saying that when you're sitting there saying that you don't know what your priorities are, you're confused on what action you should take, you're doing a big disservice to your intuition. And through that, your intuition is going to get a lot smaller and it's not going to give you the correct cues anymore. So when you are sitting there saying, I don't know what action I should be taking, my priorities are a little bit unclear right now, listen to your intuition. Your intuition is going to tell you which action you should be taking, and then literally take that action without thinking about it. Because again, if that action doesn't lead you down the right path, you're going to learn something from it and you can pivot and take the following action, but you need to do something.
I think this unclear priorities thing too also goes into when you feel like you have to prioritize everything at the same time. And I've talked a little bit about the 12-week year, and I've been documenting my journey doing it in my weekly accountability meetings on social media. And one of the things the book says is, I don't remember exactly how they word it, but they kind of say it takes courage to focus on a few things at once rather than focusing on everything. And that's why we did the decision fatigue episode, is why I did a decision fatigue audit, looking at, okay, what are all the things that are going on in my mind? Because you can't prioritize everything at the same time. So if you're not taking action on something or you're not taking meaningful action, it could be, yeah, because it's not the actual true top priority to you because you feel like you have so many other things. So look at all of the things you think you need to do and be like, what can I get rid of? Go back and listen to that decision fatigue episode, get rid of things off your plate and be like, okay, yeah, this is my priority and I'm going to treat it like it's a priority. But kind of how you were saying, the confusion around what to do and then not taking action, I feel like goes into the third action blocker that we have here, which is fear of failure and perfectionism. And this is not on our notes, but I remember you talking about different types of decisions, like type 1 or type 2 decisions, I think is what they're called, where one is basically something that is like reversible or you could go back on, and one is something that you can't. And I think a lot of times we perceive the actions that we take to be things that cannot be reversed or that we could never stop or go back on, when in reality, they're not. If you keep saying, I want to start going to the gym more often, right? Getting ClassPass and going to one class is not like an irreversible. If you don't like it, you just don't go to that class again, or you just don't renew your membership. Or if you go to a gym for a day, or you go for a walk, or you go for a run. Okay, well, if you don't like that gym, or you decide, okay, I actually don't like running, don't go again, right? Like it's not a reversible decision. It's not a forever commitment. Same thing with starting up like a business, for example. You have to be okay with showing up messy. And really, there are very, very few things in business that are not reversible. Like you don't have to have, I see people say, well, do I need an LLC first? Or do I need to, trademark this? And do I need to, just pick something and start. Be okay with showing up messy. There are so many things that once you do it, you'll learn something. And then you're like, okay, now that I have that information, I realize maybe the right way to do it would have been for me to do something before I started. But there's no consequence to it, right? Like it's really okay. Just be okay with showing up messy.
Showing up messy is actually the only way to take action quickly, because I think a lot of people, regardless of whether you are trying to start a business, start a TikTok channel, start going to the gym, you find yourself back in the planning to avoid executing phase. I know a lot of people will do this. Let's use the example of going to the gym. It is a waste if you've never been to the gym before. It is a waste of your time to sit there for 2 hours hours and plan out every single workout you're going to do for an entire month. If you've never posted a TikTok video, it is a waste of time for you to sit down and plan out an entire month's worth of TikTok videos. What you need to do is have one idea and go execute on it, or have one workout that you looked up on YouTube and go to the gym. It's a complete waste of time to sit there planning your every single move because you're probably not even going to execute step one.
And I think it goes back to the whole thing we were just saying of action creates clarity faster than thinking ever will. Sitting there and pondering on what to do generates you, it doesn't give you any results, and results give you data, whether they're positive results or negative results, or the results you want or the results you don't want. It gives you data about what to do next, right? You could plan an entire, and I've done this before where I plan content so far in advance. I go and I post one video and it hits. It does so well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, well, now I want to do more of that. Or I've had the opposite happen where I come up with some sort of big series in my head and I'm mapping everything out. And then I realize, well, this isn't really performing. For example, my recent series doing a 6-week reset, I started posting it. It's performing really well. And I mapped out the first few weeks. And a couple people asked me, did you map the whole thing out, all 6 weeks? I said, well, no, because I don't even know. I know what I need to do to get my own personal reset started. And then after a certain point, I'm going to say, okay, well, what do I need when I'm a couple weeks in? I'm 1 week into the reset. What do I feel like I need now? Okay, well, now I know what to make week 4. The same way that, because it's a series, I'm listening to what people are saying on social media. What are they commenting? What are they asking? Why would I spend all that time in the thinking and planning stage, mapping out 6 weeks worth of content when I don't even know how the first batch is going to go, right? Let me just execute, get things out there and iterate as I go and learn. And then it will just be a much better situation. But it's easy to sit there in that thought and make it so that you're not taking any action at all.
100%. And I think it's important to remember that if all of the time that you're spending planning and mapping things out, whether it's a series or your workouts or whatever it may be, you're planning with the knowledge and the information that you have in your brain right now. But like you just said, every single time you take an action, you're getting information, you're learning, you're collecting those data points. So you are more informed a week from now than you are today. So planning right now, a month in advance, is actually going to make you less equipped to plan out that video you're supposed to post a month from now than if you iterated and you collected those data points and then you came up with your next idea after that. So I think that's important as well. I also think on the fear of failure point, it's hard because people feel like they're failing in public with a lot of things. Obviously, if it's something like your workout, that might not be very public. But if it's something like you're starting a business or you want to start posting on social media, you feel like you're failing in public, but nobody's really paying attention to you from the beginning. No one's going to see what you're doing from the beginning. But then also you just have to embrace being good enough and then focusing on getting 1% better with absolutely every single action you take, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to iterate and pivot and eventually get to your end result.
Honestly, this might sound kind of out there, but I don't know if I even believe that failure is a real thing. Like, I genuinely don't know if I believe in the idea of failure, because I just don't really feel like there's much that you can, like, what even is failure? You know what I mean? What does that even mean to you and to other, like, to me, I'm like, it really has no meaning, because if you quote unquote fail, usually it's, you're just thinking you failed because it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, which, first of all, I believe that if it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to go, there's probably a reason why. But also reframe it as a data point. Now you know what doesn't work. And I see this with the conversation around dating, but I think it can be applied to so many other things. People get so frustrated or upset or bummed or angry or whatever when it doesn't work out and they go on a date with someone and it doesn't work out. Now you know that person is not for you, right? You've got your one step closer to now finding your person. And there's that I don't know who came up with this, but that question of, if you knew that your dream person was 30 dates away, or if you knew your dream business was, 5 quote unquote failed businesses away, you would be so eager to fail. You'd be like, all right, well, my husband is 30 dates away. Okay, I'm going to be out there, like, really putting myself out there trying to get 30 dates so that I can, like, quote unquote fail as fast as possible to get to my future husband. Or I'm going to go start businesses and just, like, experiment and let it happen. And if it quote unquote fails, so what? Because I know that my dream business, someone told me my dream business is 5 failures away. But it's like, when you think about that, all that is it's just data. Like, that's probably why it's a numbers game. And I just don't think, I think we get so caught up in this idea of failure But it's really just a data point. It's a data point that's bringing you closer to things. And also too, when it comes to doing things like publicly and quote unquote failing, if you, for example, let's say you want to be a content creator, you post a video online and it flops. That's great, because if it was a shitty video and it flopped, nobody saw it. So no one knows that you posted a shitty video because it didn't do well and no one saw it, right? Or like if you go for a workout and like it doesn't go as planned, nobody knows what your original workout was. No one knows what you were going for that day, Or if you've got a cute outfit on and it doesn't hit the same way that you thought it was going to, whatever, nobody knows what the vision was. No one knows. So it's really just this concept of failure, I feel like, is so made up and so fake, and we just use it as like an excuse.
Yep. I think another action blocker that we actually don't have on our list, but this is something that I used to struggle with a lot, is you try to estimate what your future sunk costs are going to be, and then you avoid taking action because you're worried about a future sunk cost. And what I mean by this is, let's say you have a business idea or a new product that you want to work on, and you don't necessarily know if it's going to work out. So you're hesitant to take action on spending 10 hours developing the product or spending 10 hours getting your website up and running and whatever it may be, because you're worried that if it doesn't work out, then those 10 hours that you spent working on it are going to be a sunk cost. It's going to be a waste of your time. But that is such a bad way to look at anything, because if you don't believe in yourself from the beginning, then it's not going to work out. So you have to go into absolutely everything assuming it's going to work out until it doesn't, and you pivot and you iterate and you get closer to the thing that is going to work out. But just remembering again that if you spend 10 hours, let's say, developing a product and then no one buys your product, okay, what did you learn in those 10 hours? You probably learned how to, I don't know if it's like an Excel something, you probably learned something in Excel. You probably learned how to list a product online. You learned so many things that you can take to the next thing that you take action on, that literally nothing is a sunk cost.
And we get so caught up in the sunk cost and the wasted time and, oh, well, if I spent 10 hours building a website, it's wasted time. How many hours have you spent twiddling your thumbs, sitting on that idea? How many years has it been? You know what I mean? Or again, it goes back to the dating conversation. I see people say that, well, then it's a waste of time because I went on the date.
What would you have been doing in that time anyway?
What would you be doing anyways? And also, how do you think you're going to meet your person? Just sitting inside your apartment, twiddling your thumbs? No, you know what I mean? You have to be out there doing something, executing in some way to get to where you want to be. And the alternative is you sitting there twiddling your thumbs doing nothing. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. And every time that I say this with my career a lot, people will say, well, how did you know that freelance marketing was for you? I didn't. I came up with a list of things that I thought might give me the life that I want and that I would enjoy. And I picked one and I said, all right, I'm going to start there. And if I had taken the mindset of, okay, well, this could be just a colossal waste of time if this isn't what I want to do, then I would have sat there and I would have done nothing, and I would be in a 9-to-5, unhappy, probably working as a lawyer. I probably would have gone to law school if I didn't want to do it. And that was like,
and that would have been a way more expensive waste of time.
Oh my gosh. That would have been a colossal waste of time, because I would have been unhappy. I would be in debt up to my eyeballs, and I would be broke because human rights lawyers really don't make that much money. So like, you know what I mean? It just would have been such a different scenario, but I took the mindset of, okay, I'm going to start with one thing that I think could give me the life that I want. And it just happened that the first thing I tried ended up being the thing that I loved. But I was like, I'll do it. And if it doesn't work out or I don't like it, cool. Now I know, cross that off my list. Next thing, right? Like move my way down.
100%. And even within freelancing, I'm sure there was a lot of pivoting and iterating and picking, I tried out this type of client and I don't like working in this industry. I don't like working at a company of this size. I don't like working in a social media management role as opposed to a UGC role. Like there are so many different things that you learn through every action that you take that, it's how many actions you take is completely dependent on how quickly you reach your goals is completely dependent on how many actions you're taking.
Perfect example of this is when I started freelancing, I basically took on any opportunity that I could, because to me, I was like, I don't really know what I'm interested in. I don't know what I'm good at. And quite frankly, I have no experience. So I better just take the opportunities that come my way and get my foot in the door and start hustling, because I need to make money. So I took this opportunity doing sales. I am not cut out for sales. That's what I learned in that. I worked with this client for 2 weeks. I was calling people who lived in California and asking to build an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, which is like a little tiny home essentially, in people's backyards, in LA County in exchange for like, they would get some of the rental income, whatever, because this was a real estate company. Cold calling people asking to build a little house in their backyard. That's crazy. And I was getting paid like $20 an hour to do it. And I was having to work at like, it was like, gosh, like 9 p.m. Eastern because I was calling people in California. Horrible, horrible. I hated every single minute of it. I did it for 2 weeks and I said, you know what? This is really not for me. And I'm out. And I parted ways with that client. I could sit there and think, well, I just wasted so much time. No, it taught me I hate sales and I would never do sales again. Oh my gosh, people who do sales, you are God's strongest soldiers because you are built different. That was like, it was awful. And I could sit there and think, oh, it was a colossal waste of time because I spent time onboarding onto this client's company, learning their company, calling people, doing a thing, whatever. I hardly made any money by the end of it because I was only there for 2 weeks. The client didn't even want to pay me the full amount that they owed me. So then the platform I was doing it through ended up paying me the remainder because the hours were clocked. But I could sit there and be like, look, this was such a waste of time. But I sat there and said, great, now I know I hate that. Now when I'm looking for freelance opportunities, anytime they mention sales, I'm out. That's not interesting to me. I started doing social media management. I was like, okay, I like this. Did it for a while. Then I realized, okay, I don't like doing it 40 hours a week. So if I'm going to do social media management, it needs to be 2 clients maybe. And then I have something else. Okay, what do I like now? And every single thing that I did got me closer and closer. I mean, none of it was a waste of time because here I am 4 years later. And I know, I'm in such a different place with my business, but it's easy to view it as just a waste of time, but also the time is going to pass regardless. I know it's like a really, people say it as a joke, but at the end of the day is going to end. And it's so true, right? The time it's going to go. You're going to end up being 25, 30, 35, 40, 50, whatever. Time's going to pass. Your life's going to continue to go. So whether you execute on the thing that you want or not is up to you. But you're going to end up there regardless. So would you rather end up at age 40 being like, you know what? Yeah, I tried all these things and I finally found what I like. Or would you rather end up at age 40 and say, well, I was too afraid to take action on anything. So now I'm still in the same place 20 years later and I have no idea what I like doing. Or I never went after the thing that I wanted because I never took action.
Yeah, those are really good examples with like the freelance clients. I think this applies to whatever career you're in general too. I know for me in college, I was really hell bent on getting a bunch of different internships in different industries because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And like I interned in an HR department, a marketing department, an operations department. I did a recruiting internship where I was doing sales. And if I did an internship and I realized pretty quickly that I didn't like it or I didn't want to pursue it, I still had to show up to the internship for the defined period of time that I committed to. So you could view that as a waste of time, or you could view it as, okay, I'm going to learn some skill here that I can use in my career, no matter what I end up going into. And I've just narrowed it down even further on what I like and what I don't like about different things. And regardless of what point you are in your career, I think this is applicable too, because there probably are, and it obviously depends on your company, but there probably are opportunities for you to shadow or like look into different departments in your companies, different roles. I know when I was in the audit department at my last corporate job, I was doing this with the product team because that was like a department that I was interested in. And I was shadowing some people and having mentorship calls and things like that. So yeah, the time's going to pass regardless. The time you spend in your corporate job or whatever career you're in, that time is going to pass regardless. So do you want to take action and try different things and see what you love and what you don't love? It definitely can get you closer to building your dream life. I think the last action blocker that we have on our list is lack of energy. And this is something that I have been thinking a lot about recently. I actually just posted a video about this morning, but I heard this on a podcast last week and it said, going after the things that we want don't suck our energy, they give us energy. So if we're feeling exhausted, is it because we're not doing anything that lights us up? And I think we all fall into this trap because everyone's busy, everyone has a lot going on. We're probably all doing a lot of things that we don't necessarily want to be doing. Maybe if you're in a job that you don't necessarily love, or you come home and you have 3 kids to take care of and that's sucking a lot of your energy, like that's totally valid. But I think that's a good mindset shift to remember that when you do things that actually light you up, so if you have a project that you've been wanting to get started on, if you have a business idea that has been in the back of your mind for a couple of months and you feel like you don't have any energy, try it because it might be the thing that actually gives you energy.
Before we get into the 3 like action strategies that we have, or strategies for taking action, actually executing more, I want to talk a little bit too about the cost of inaction, because the energy part, not having energy is one of the costs of inaction, but also studies of regret, like when you measure people's regret across their lifetime, or you interview people who are later in life and you ask them about their regrets, it shows that people are actually far more likely to regret the actions that they didn't take over the actions that they did. And there's this book called 30 Lessons for Living. I think I've read it twice at this point. It's a really great book that kind of inspired me on this topic. And this doesn't give away anything, that the book says, but they basically do a study of all these like elderly people, and they ask them, what are your best advice for living? And in so many instances, these people talk about things that they wish they did. Like they wish they travel more. They wish they nurtured their relationships differently. They wish that they, didn't do XYZ things with their kids or with parenting or with their jobs or whatever. It is such a good book. It's a really easy read too. If people want to read it, I highly recommend, called 30 Lessons for Living. But one of the things too I read it back in 2022, I think, when I was like living in California for 6 weeks. And it was such a perfect timing because doing that was such a leap, and I was, worried about it, whatever. And it made me realize too that every day you sit and you don't take action, you're actually losing more and more moments where you don't get to enjoy the thing that you say you want. So for example, if you're like, we're just going to use exercise, for example. I want to exercise more because I want to have more energy. I want to be more nimble and more flexible. And I want to be able to go up the stairs and not feel winded when I get to the top. I want to be able to run around with my future kids in 5 years and not be the parent who's like sitting on the sidelines because I'm not physically fit enough to run. That's something, for example, that's important to me right now. Like I'm thinking about how I'm moving my body now for the purpose of longevity. Every time that I just like blow up myself off and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to go do that. I'm not going to take action on this. I'm not going to put myself in the uncomfortable situation to show up to a new workout class or to follow through with what I say I'm going to do. I'm missing out on all the days that I could possibly have more energy and feel more nimble and flexible and have better cardiovascular health because I'm not taking action. Or if I say, for example, when I say I want to start a business. If I just sit there and I twiddle my thumbs over and over and over again, who knows, maybe on the other side of taking action, I would actually have my dream job by running my business. And every time I sit there and I twiddle my thumbs and I don't take action, I'm losing days that I could potentially have that if I just took action, because you don't know what's going to be on the other side of taking action until you actually do it.
100%. I love like the timing thing and framing that as, yeah, the longer you wait to get started, the less time you have when you inevitably achieve what you really want out of life. So let's get into our 3 strategies for taking more action. And the first one, we definitely talked about this one a lot, which is starting before you're ready. So again, just the idea that everything is a lesson, nothing is wasted time. Even if it doesn't come to fruition, you learn something through every single action you take. And we wanted to tie in this idea of a minimum viable action. So what is the smallest step that you can take that will still move the needle forward, and challenge yourself to take a minimum viable action every single day or every single week to get you closer to what you want to achieve. I think when we're having the conversation about action, it's easy to sit there and feel like you need to do this big monumental thing, and you need to have it needs to cost you a lot of money, and you need to go hire a business coach or do whatever it may be. But it's not that. It's about taking these small actions, your minimum viable actions, but taking them consistently.
I was just going to say, it's not about, there's like this chart. I don't know where it comes from actually, but I can visualize it in my head. It shows if you take inconsistent big actions, the amount of progress you make is so different versus if you just take consistent small actions. And it's funny because when people message me all the time and they say, how'd you get started on freelancing? Or I don't know where to start. What do I do to start? And it's so funny to me because I tell people the same thing. I say, go talk to someone who does what you want to do. Literally do that. Or go Google like how to get started. That's quite literally. Go watch a YouTube video. Yeah. Go find someone on LinkedIn who's doing what you're doing and follow them. Because a lot of times it's people who they wanted to freelance something that I don't do, or they want to start a different type of business that I don't do. I'm like, go literally the smallest step. It doesn't have to be this big monumental thing, like you said. It's just because also I think we underestimate the power of momentum, and we think that we have to do this big, huge thing in order to get us started. When in reality, doing a lot of those small things is what helps you like build momentum. would describe it to people, which this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but for some reason in my head it does. I think about, let's say you're pushing a snowball up a hill, which why would you be doing that? I don't know. But you're pushing a snowball up a hill, and when it starts off, it feels so little, right? And you start to like roll it, push it up, and you think about it, if it's a little tiny snowball and you were to turn around and drop the snowball down the hill, it's tiny. It's probably not going to go very far. But when you push it up the hill, it feels like, oh my gosh, this is kind of exhausting. The snowball's getting bigger and bigger though. And then suddenly when you get to the top of the hill, you've got a big snowball. And guess what? When you push that snowball, because it's big and you've built it up, it's going to roll all the way back down the other side of the hill. So I kind of think of it, which I don't know if that makes really any sense, but it does in my head. But I feel like it's kind of that way too. Think about the small actions that you can use to get your snowball to the top of the hill. And once you're at the top of the hill, it'll be much easier to push it back down the other side.
Yeah, you're building momentum. And through that, you're also building motivation, which is the last thing that we wanted to say for strategy number 1, which is that action creates motivation, not the other way around. I feel like a lot of times people sit there and say, I'm not feeling motivated right now. I am not in a phase where I'm executing. They are feeling a little bit low energy and they're waiting for that motivation to strike. It's never going to strike until you start taking action. But when you start taking action, you're going to get that momentum and it's going to be easier to stay motivated. So with that, the second action strategy that we have here is to create accountability. So there's so many different things that you can do to create that aspect of accountability for yourself or with other people. Obviously, if you are doing something with another person, having an accountability partner is really helpful. But even if you're doing something by yourself, even something as small as reminding yourself every single day, either setting a reminder on your phone, or I know for me in my daily planner, since I have a digital daily planner and like I can edit the format of it, I added a little box at the top of my daily planner that I labeled today's one thing. And basically what I do is every single day I have a little bullet point and I write down what is the one thing that I'm going to do today that is actually going to move the needle forward. So not checking my emails, not my little like miscellaneous daily tasks, but what is the one thing that I'm going to do that's actually going to propel my business forward or whatever else I'm working on.
For me, I think one of the really good accountability strategies has been putting it into a challenge or an experiment format. I've talked about this on the podcast before and on my own social media, but you all know I've been doing a 1-year experiment. I do the 12-week year. I used to like habit track and would see like what my completion rate was on different things. With the dietitian we had on the podcast, I'm like working with her one-on-one and she challenged me to get like 50 plant sources a day and like, or a week. I mean, a day would be crazy, 50 plant sources a week, right? But something about framing it in terms of a challenge or an experiment really helps me stay true to it. So even if it's something like I'm going to do XYZ thing for 7 days, and if I hate it, I'll stop, but I'm committing to 7 days because it's an experiment. I'm doing that right now with a new morning routine. I wanted to add in meditation because all of my doctors and the health professionals I've worked with are like, you should really meditate. Like you're a girl on the go. You should take some time to just like meditate every morning. And I was like, oh, like I don't want to meditate, whatever. So I came up with a new morning routine and I added meditation in. I do it for like 3 to 5 minutes every day. I don't do it very long. I'm working my way up. And I said, okay, I'm going to commit to doing this for all of Q2. And if I get to the end of Q2 and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Meditation is not moving the needle for me. I don't like it at all. Fine. Then I will stop. But you do not know the plan doesn't work until you execute on the plan. You've got to come up with it. And so for me, having like a challenge or experiment format allows me to be like, okay, here's the plan. We're going to commit to it for this amount of time. And we're just going to see what the results are. And it takes some of the pressure off too.
Yeah, I love the time-based commitments, which brings us to our last aspect of the creating accountability, which is creating public commitments. And I feel like you can do this with like different challenges and things too. If you find like an accountability group or anything like that, and you kind of say your challenge to other people to make that public commitment. But I actually heard about this in the book Diary of a CEO, which I talked about on the podcast a couple times before, which is also a really great book. But the author gave the example that he was trying to learn more about business, and a good way to learn something is to create the mission to teach it. So you're creating the mission to teach it to other people because they say the best way to learn about something is to teach it. So he wanted to learn more about business. So he committed to posting once per day on Twitter for an entire year. He gave himself that time period as well about something related to business. So naturally, to have enough content to be able to post daily, he he had to learn a lot more about business. And through that, he was also learning how to speak and articulate his thoughts correctly and all of that. So naturally, by the end of that year, he learned a lot about business. So I think that's a really great way too. I know this is something that I did when I started my TikTok account back in January of 2022. I was like, I'm going to commit to posting 3 videos a day for 60 days. And if at the end of those 60 days, I hate posting TikToks, I won't keep doing it, but we'll just see what happens. And I made sure I gave myself that full 2 months to, again, see if the plan worked. And the plan did work and I loved it. And I'm still doing it to this day.
And view it as an experiment or a challenge to get results, an opportunity to get results, not an obstacle that you need to conquer. Because I think sometimes we view it as, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to do this for 60 days. And if it doesn't generate results, I'm giving up on it. No, do it. That's why I think the 1 year experiment has been so impactful for me. And we do have an episode where I kind of share more about it if you want to go back and listen to it. But I think viewing it as an experiment and seeing, okay, what results will be generated? Not I'm doing this because I want to make X dollars and be this, person or whatever. I'm like, okay, let me do this and let me see what happens. Let the world kind of surprise me and see what happens, or let me extract data from this, because that's really what an experiment is. You try something and you see what happens. I remember being in like science class in school, and you mix the things together and you're like, whoa, okay, like that's what happens when I do XYZ thing. And this is what happens when I do that. Okay, I'm going to try something and see what happens. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to try something else. And I think we're so used to that in the academic settings, and we need to apply it to our life. Okay, yeah, I'm going to commit to this for this many days and I'm going to see, what do I learn at the end of it? But you have to commit to it, right? You can't extract meaningful data from doing something once. You have to do it multiple times to be able to recognize a pattern and to be able to extract data from it. And that's literally all that life and learning and growth is being able to extract data from the things that you do.
Definitely. I love the idea of framing everything as an experiment and taking lessons from everything. That brings us into our third strategy, which is to create an action-oriented identity for yourself. So we actually just filmed a podcast episode on the topic of confidence. So if you didn't listen to that, definitely go back, because we talked a lot in that episode about your self-identity, which is so, so important for your confidence. But I think on the idea of your self-identity, creating an action-oriented identity for yourself is so important. So what we mean by this is show up as the person that takes action. Like when you think of yourself, like, are you telling yourself that I don't execute on my ideas? I don't take action. I am the person that says I want to do a million things, but I never actually go after it. Is that what you think about yourself? And how can we reframe that to be the person that executes on our ideas and believes in ourselves to actually go after what we want? One little kind of tip here is to shift your mindset to stop making your goals an option. So I always come back to the example of your backup alarm. So if you're telling yourself you want to start becoming an early morning person and you set your alarm for 5 a.m., but you also set your alarm for 6 a.m., just in case you don't wake up at 5 a.m., you're telling yourself that your goal is an option and you don't have that action-oriented identity, because you're telling yourself you're the person that doesn't stick to your goals. So look at all of your different goals and where are you telling yourself that your goals are optional.
I love that, and not giving yourself a backup. Like you just don't have a choice. It's like what I'm doing, and I don't have a choice. I think on that topic too, for me, one thing, like signing up for a workout class or having that commitment to somebody else, like I'm going on a walk with you or I'm signing up to that workout class, there's no other option. I'm not going to cancel. I'm not going to back out, especially when I'm booking a class through ClassPass, because I'll get charged like $25 if I don't show up, right? It's like, I am going to go. I think also too, as a practical way to get yourself in that mindset more, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast. I don't know if we have an episode on it. I think we do. It might be in the one about how to believe you're capable of more, but practicing affirmations has fundamentally changed my entire life. I have been doing them for, I think I was actually making a video today and I actually pulled the number, but I think it's been 479 days that I have done affirmations every single day consistently. And it might even be longer actually, because I think I started doing them before last year. So it could almost be like 2 years. But I have been able to effectively like rewire certain beliefs in my head about who I am and how I identify. So I haven't always actually been an action oriented person or maybe the most confident or whatever. And by practicing affirmations every day, I'm able to say, no, like I am the kind of person who executes. When you say that to yourself over and over and over again, without getting too much into the neuroscience and nitty gritty, you actually can rewire and reverse the belief in your head that that's not who you are. So if you do believe that you're someone who is not very action oriented, or you have a history of not following through on the things that you say are going to do, practice affirmations that literally say like, I am someone who executes on the things I want to do, or on the things I know I need to do or should do or whatever. Or I am the kind of person who shows up for herself. I am the kind of person who does what I say I'm going to do. Literally say those, write them down, journal every night, write them down, say them to yourself. And you will literally be able to rewire that in your head to then quite literally become a more action oriented person.
Yeah, I love that so much. The episode we did on affirmations, we posted that back in January. If you want to go back and listen, we were talking about some of the affirmations that we literally pulled out our journals for that episode and like showed all of the different affirmations that we were saying. But yeah, what you say about yourself is so important, which is the last thing that we have on this list, which is to be conscious of the words that you're saying to yourself. So are you catching yourself saying things like, I want to do this? Change that to am doing this. You don't want to do anything. What you want to do, you are doing. So I am doing this. I am taking action on that. And the other one is I'm trying to, removing that and reshifting that phrase to I am doing this. You're not trying to do anything. You are doing it. You are taking action on it. Yeah. And then you can pivot from there and decide if you want to continue doing that, but you are taking action. You're not trying to take action. So
I think when you say,
oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well,
sorry, I'm trying to, not I am. Or
no, your thing like froze. So I thought you were like waiting for me to say something, but I don't think I think so. Does it make more sense for me to say what I was going to say, or for you to just wrap it up?
No, for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think when you say I am trying to do something or I want to do something, you're mentally kind of distancing yourself from that, and you're creating a separation, because I think it feels more comfortable than to say I am, because as soon as you proclaim I am doing something, you're kind of making a public commitment to it in a way where you're like, yeah, I am doing this, I am doing that, versus, because you hear people say, well, yeah, like I want to get into this one day, or yeah, I want to pick up this thing one day, or I want to pick up this activity or this hobby or whatever. It's like, all right, like what's the timeline for that? Like, what are you doing? And I think when you say I am, it kind of gets rid of that distance, but it's easy to say I am trying or I want to, and that kind of allows you to separate yourself from it and table it mentally versus actually being committed to it in the moment. So yeah, shifting to the I am is really important.
Yeah, I love that so much. And with that brings us to the end of today's episode. And I really, really love this episode. So please let us know on Spotify if this resonated with you, or if you have anything else you want us to cover on the topic of taking more action and going after what you want out of life, because that's what this entire podcast is about. So leave any comments, feedback, questions in Spotify, or you can DM us on Instagram at The Life You Love Pod. We love hearing from you guys, but thanks for tuning into the podcast, and until next week.